The last photo before someone disappears is the final moment of certainty families have about their loved ones. They're the moments before everything in the subject's life changed forever, but the vast majority of them are rather mundane. Number 5. Kiara Henry was last seen on July 21, 2019 at a car rental store at an airport on the Hawaiian island of Maui. The car was found abandoned by local park officials 5 days later, but Kiara and the few possessions she took with her have never been found. Kiara was originally from San Diego, but was in Maui on vacation. She decided to travel alone, and as far as we know, there's no evidence she planned to meet up with anyone while she was there. She checked into her hotel on July 18th and spent the next 2 days on tours. One of these was a bus tour, which was located at a local park. 3 days into her trip, Kiara traveled to Hertz Rental Car, passing many other rental car stores on her way from her hotel. It was there that she was seen on CCTV carrying a holdall and a backpack. At one point, it appears she asked if there's someone she can leave her bag with while she's doing something, and the receptionist indicated to leave it under a table. Kiara would later put all of her luggage into the back of the vehicle and drive 2 hours to the local park. 4 days later, park officials reported the car for suspicious activity, though it isn't clear what that activity was, and it doesn't seem as if the car was investigated at that time. The following day, she was reported missing by her family. They'd been trying to get in touch with her, but since the day she'd rented the car, her phone had gone straight to voicemail. All activity on her credit cards also stopped after she rented the vehicle. At this point, park officials reported the car as abandoned, having realized it didn't belong to any of the campers in the area. Hertz recovered the car, where they found her luggage in the trunk and her ID and credit card hidden in the center console. The only thing that was missing was a small backpack, the car keys, and Kiara's phone. Unfortunately, any clues that may have come from the car were wiped away when Hertz cleaned the vehicle completely. There's been a number of tip-offs to police and Kiara's family in the years since she disappeared, but none have led investigators any closer to finding her. Number 4. Sia Taylor dropped her boyfriend off at his home in Plant City, Florida, around 4 p.m. on February 6, 2020, and she hasn't been seen since. Just hours later, before anyone realized she was missing, a police officer came across her car abandoned but still running on train tracks about a mile away. The driver's door was opened and Sia's phone was found on the ground nearby. It's not known how long the car had been on the tracks. At the time, no train had been on those tracks in over a year due to maintenance, so the car would have been left there sometime after Sia had left her boyfriend's home. Rather than running the plates, the officers moved the car off of the tracks and onto a side road and placed the phone in the car and locked the door, then presumably forgot about it. For the next 3 days, Sia's family tried to get in contact with her. She wasn't answering the phone and no friends had spoken to her since she left work on the 6th. Finally, on February 9th, a family member found Sia's abandoned car and a missing persons report was filed. Police and Sia's friends and family began searching the surrounding areas for any sign of her. On her phone, they found selfies taken the day of her disappearance, including one taken in the car. They offer no clues as to what could have happened, but show exactly what clothing she was wearing when she disappeared. Sia's debit card was also found in the car. About 3 weeks after she disappeared, her shoes were found on a drainage pipe near where the car had been found. Hanging on a post next to the pipe was one of the missing persons posters Sia's family had been putting up. It was an area that had already been searched, and police believe the shoes had been deliberately put there. So far, there appears to have been little development since that day. Sia's family urges anyone who has any information to contact the authorities. Number 3. Patricia Krieger's family have all but given up finding her alive, but now, more than 10 years since she disappeared, there's still no sign of her. Patricia was 65 years old and hiking with her partner and his family when she disappeared. According to the family, they were on a trip to scatter a loved one's ashes on October 2nd, 2010. At some point during the trip, the final photo of Patricia was taken, showing her looking out at the scenery. On the way back down the mountain, Patricia and her dog, Bear, took a wrong turn. Her partner, Larry Presley, called after her to tell her she was going the wrong way, but Patricia apparently didn't hear. Presley and his family assumed that the two trails would meet further down the mountain. Patricia was still relatively fit for her age, even though she wasn't an experienced hiker, so they allowed her to go down the other route while they took the correct trail. The two trails didn't reconnect, and Patricia hasn't been seen since. When Patricia didn't return to the car, the police were contacted. Sniffer dogs tracked her down the trail to where she'd last been seen, leading investigators to believe that she did make it off the mountain, as her scent was also picked up in the parking lot, though she didn't do so with her dog. Bear was found 3 days after Patricia disappeared, malnourished but uninjured. It appeared the dog had spent those 3 days on the mountain, and it seemed unlikely Patricia would wander off without him. Many people believe Presley knows more than he has said. According to Patricia's son, he didn't inform Patricia's family that she was missing and refused to let them into the house without a court order. Presley had several violent convictions and is currently serving a prison sentence for assaulting a police officer. According to Patricia's family, he contacted her not long after getting out of prison, after seeing her husband's obituary in the paper. Patricia was relatively well off and kind-hearted, and they claim he took advantage of her and cut her off from her family. Patricia's family claim Presley took her life and likely disposed of her body, but so far any remains have not been found. Number 2. Like millions of other Americans across the country, Erica Nicole Hunt planned to celebrate the 4th of July weekend with her friends and family in 2016. Everything seemed normal when she arrived at her uncle's home in Louisiana on the 3rd, with her 2-year-old daughter. She and the rest of the family enjoyed the warm weather and a barbecue. Erica was in a good place in her life and chatted with her mother and sister about plans for her upcoming 21st birthday and her aim to move houses in the near future. If there were any problems in her life, she didn't share it with her family, and she was very close with them. That evening, she left her daughter with her mother with plans to pick her up the following morning so they could go to Charles Lake with a friend who also had a daughter. It was the last time anyone would see Erica. Erica didn't return home that night, according to her roommate, but nobody really noticed anything was wrong until the following day. When Erica didn't arrive to pick up her daughter, her mother Shannon grew concerned. Shannon and the friend who had planned to go to the lake both tried to get a hold of her, but her phone would always go to voicemail. When they tried visiting her home, they discovered she hadn't returned home. Her wallet and ID were at the house, but her phone was missing. The disappearance was completely out of character for Erica, and according to her family, there was no way she would ever just vanish without her daughter, and even if her phone had died, she would have found a way to get in contact with them. However, it wasn't until July 6th that her family filed a missing persons report. The case went cold despite multiple searches by investigators and the community. There were a number of sightings around the city, but police haven't been able to confirm any of them. One of these sightings was even allegedly behind a grocery store, so it seems odd that there would be no CCTV to back up the sighting. In 2018, a tip led police to believe Erica's remains had been buried in the garden of a house in Louisiana. Either Erica or a member of Erica's family had previously lived in this house, but they hadn't been living there in 2016, so it's not clear if the person who had been living there when Erica disappeared knew her. A number of animal bones were found on the property, but cadaver dogs found no human remains. Erica remains missing, and what could possibly have caused her disappearance remains a mystery. Number 1. The last photo of Kristen Modafferi is almost as frustrating as the case of her disappearance. The image was taken on a museum trip shortly before she vanished in June of 1997. She stands with her back toward the camera, looking at the art. Kristen and a UC Berkeley student had plans to start a photography course in the near future when the photo was taken. It was the day before that course started that she disappeared. Kristen was last seen by her work colleagues at around 3:45 p.m. on June 23rd. She worked at a coffee shop in San Francisco, and her shift finished at 3 p.m. and she left the shop as normal, but coworkers spotted her 45 minutes later chatting with a blonde woman on another floor of the mall. This woman remains unidentified. It wasn't until a few days later that anybody noticed Kristen was missing. She was living in Oakland at the time of the disappearance, sharing a house with 4 young men. None were alarmed when they didn't see Kristen that night. She had plans to go to a beach party and they assumed she'd stayed out. When Kristen didn't show up for her classes, Kristen's parents were made aware of the situation. They called the house and asked to speak to her. It was then that one of the men Kristen was living with informed them that they hadn't seen her in 3 days. Response by police was also slow. She was 18 years old at the time of her disappearance and was not classified as vulnerable. When the investigation started in earnest, the focus was on the Bay Area. Kristen planned to go to a party, which, according to her housemates, was taking place on Ocean Beach. Sniffer dogs did actually pick up her scent on the beach, but they lost it near some ruins. However, Kristen had apparently asked her coworkers for directions to Baker Beach, a beach slightly north of Ocean Beach and about an hour's walk from the ruins. Another twist came not long after she disappeared. On July 10th, an anonymous man called into the news station, claiming 2 women who Kristen was in a lesbian love triangle with had taken her life and thrown her body into the ocean. He includes a lot of details, including the names of the women, and while he remained anonymous, police quickly worked out who the caller was. According to police, John Onuma made the call. The information turned out to be false, and Onuma claimed he'd made it up to get back at the 2 women who were apparently trying to get his girlfriend fired. What connection Onuma or his girlfriend had to Kristen remains unclear, but they remain persons of interest in the case. Years later, a group of women claimed Onuma had kidnapped and beaten them. One claimed that he told them how he knew what had happened to Kristen, but there's no physical evidence linking Onuma to the case. The case went cold up until 2015, when a dog known for sniffing out unmarked graves of World War II soldiers was taken to the house where Kristen had lived. The dog detected human remains in the house basement, and further tests confirmed that there were human remains in the area, but when investigators conducted a dig, they found nothing. Extremely new chemical techniques found traces of Kristen's blood near the porch steps. Kristen remains missing, but investigators hope the new information could move the case forward. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.